Being a male and reading through really difficult situations through a female lens is always something that I find so interesting, and I always have such a large takeaway. Like it truly is a life-changing experience for me because I get to step into females' shoes. G'day, I'm Luke Bateman, and this is In the Good Books. This is a podcast where we dive into the most incredible stories ever told and talk about the books which have left lasting impressions on you long after you close the cover. First up for the episode, we have got some listener audio from Emily.
Hey Luke, I'm Emily, I'm 26. We've had our book club with 5 girls for just over a year now, and it's incredible. So every month one person chooses the book that we're all going to read. I do think book clubs work best when you all read the same book that month. So we've read mainly new release this year. Some highlights have been The Season by Helen Garner, Trent Dalton's Lola in the Mirror, and Tomorrow, Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabriel Zevin. Last month's pick was All Fours by Miranda July, and I loved it. It had me immersed in the very messy first-person narration, and it dealt with female topics and female health issues like menopause in a really unfiltered way. So I'll definitely be reading more Miranda July. And yeah, then on the first Sunday of every month, we get together over a few cheeky mimosas and discuss the book. So themes, writing, it's basically like high school English class, except you don't have the high school teacher standing there telling you that you've interpreted the book wrong. So yeah, I love it and I would recommend it to anyone.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you so much for that audio. I love that. I love hearing about you and your 5 girlfriends and your little book club. Like it genuinely, it brings me so much joy to know that people are out there and forming these little like communities and social connections through books. Like it's so wonderful, and it's truly like it makes me feel warm. It makes me feel so warm hearing stories like that. I have never read any Helen Garner, but that sounds like an interesting book. I think I'm someone who, like, I'm a big believer in. I think we as a society have so much shame around like our male and female health and sort of like sexual health and all the inner workings of our body. So I'm a very, very big fan of being, of talking very openly about that. And it's something that shame has really impeded people from discovering about themselves. So I'm so happy to hear about your girls' book club. Maybe along the line sometime I'd be able to get down for some mimosas on a Sunday. That would be incredible. I would love to sit with the girls, talk about books, have some mimosas on a Sunday. What describe a better Sunday for me, please? Okay, so today's episode is our very first episode of our podcast book club. So Emily, your audio is perfectly on theme for this. I'm so excited to be doing our first podcast book club episode. Like, this is something I enjoy so much, and I'm sure you all know by now that I love talking about books. I love reading the same books as other people, discussing them. So I'm so glad I get to do it here with all of you. If you haven't listened to the first episode on our podcast book club where we introduced the book, which was The Great Alone, please go back and listen to that, and really feel free to join in on this. Feel free to join me in reading these books, in joining the podcast book club, and taking a literature journey with me. The Great Alone, I will quickly summarize what it was about. It's about the Albright family, and they moved to a remote homestead in Alaska in the 1970s, hoping for a new start, but they really faced some challenges from environment, from family, from people, from society, and it is a gripping and compelling story that had me in its thralls. My first thoughts on the book were incredible, like absolutely incredible. This was the 3rd Kristin Hannah novel that I've read, and I absolutely loved it. I love Kristin Hannah. I think that her writing is really unique and really compelling. I am getting the picture now, though, that all of Kristin's books are just really, really hard hitting. And it is, while I love that and I enjoy it so much, you've got to be prepared for these books. Like, you have to enter them being ready to be absolutely walloped emotionally. My immediate takeaways from the book were, it's always so interesting to me being a male and reading through really difficult situations through a female lens is always something that I find so interesting. And I always have such a large takeaway when I read those really compelling female stories and female perspectives on social situations and experiences in the world, because it's something that to me is so foreign and so unknown. It's truly it truly is a life-changing experience for me, because I get to step into females' shoes and understand the world through their eyes. And my immediate takeaway was there were so many situations in this book where I was frustrated and I was like, oh, just do this. Like, just do this. Like, why are you doing this? Like, all you have to do is this. And I had to stop myself and be like, you know what? Especially from a physical angle, like there was a lot of, I suppose, like there was a lot of DV in this book. And from a physical perspective, I just was like, I can't understand why you just don't like stop this or leave or move. And it was really challenging to actually sit with myself and go, you know what? This is what it feels like for women in these situations. And it's so difficult for me to wrap my head around because of the physical differences between men and women. And it's truly something that I felt really frustrated with, and I had to work through that frustration and understand that within myself. Now, the setting of this book is in Alaska, and now Alaska is my next destination, I think, from this book, because it is described so beautifully, and the setting, like the background of this book is just so, I suppose, raw, and it's just full of nature. And because it's set in the 1970s, it takes me back. It makes me feel like when I was growing up in Western Queensland, like it's raw and there's no luxuries. It's just you and you. It's just you versus nature. And it is simply beautiful and spectacular. And I cannot wait to go to Alaska myself and have a look at just the beautiful natural landscape there and see whether the description in the book matches the place, because it's stunning. So the themes of this book for me were survival, and that's like physical survival against the wilderness, and I suppose physical and mental survival happening internally inside of a house. That was a massive theme for me, just the survival aspect of it, braving nature, braving the cold winters of Alaska. They had to learn and adapt very quickly to their surroundings and really get on board with what was required of them to survive an Alaskan winter. And then you dive deeply into the survival aspect of Lenny and Cora, who are suffering just, abuse at home, and the hardship that they had to face, one from outside and then one from inside. Like, I just found that such a, as I said, like it was really difficult to read at times, and it was really difficult to sit with that story and continue through it, because it was just so hard to put yourself in. And another theme that really stuck out for me was, of course, the family dynamics, and that was between daughter and father, daughter and mother, mother and father, just the interpersonal relationship. It was really challenging to understand that and try and empathize with that, and the choices that, or I suppose the relationship between the mother and father was something that I really, really disliked. Like it was pure dislike. And I just, at times, like I was just shaking with my frustration of the choices that were being made and how that was impacting not just them, but the people around them. And it was really, really tough. And one of the final themes that was, so prominent throughout this book was love and loss. And I'm a big believer in, with great love comes great pain. Like, you cannot have great love without great pain. They are two sides of the exact same coin. And I thought that this book really displayed that in a beautiful but harrowing sense. And that was, the love of the place that they were living in, the love that they had in a partnership, the love between mother and daughter that, obviously extended beyond the realms of, paternal into protection. And it was love between young love between two people who were, I suppose, held apart from each other. And I mean, seriously, who does not love, or who does not just revel in a love story where two young lovers are kept apart by circumstances? I think, there's a part of us, or there's definitely a part of me that just really loves a good love story where the lovers are not allowed to be together. It's something that in my mind, I suppose I would romanticize something like that quite often. It's a tale of soulmates in a way that aren't allowed to be together. And I want to deep dive into these characters as well, because they were very complex, really complex characters. Lenny, the daughter, like obviously the main character, the narrator, all of her, like her development and her journey was very profound and and very complex. And it's once again, like I keep coming back to this point. It's because it's not a experience or a situation that I'd ever been through. Like, it was just so interesting to me and so gripping to me to be able to walk through that journey with her and see the development and see the challenges and see how she overcame them, and be able to envision that in my mind and the takeaways that I took from that. And her journey was, was very traumatic and very challenging most of the time, trying to navigate the situation between her father and mother and trying to protect her mother. But also, like, there was love for her father as well, which made things so difficult. The inability to leave someone that you love. And then her love with Matthew, which is, which was a transcendent love that moved above all of it. And she's one of my favorite characters, and I think Lenny will stick with me for a very long time. And then there was Ern, like Dad Ern. Oh my God, the kind of man that I just infuriates me, someone. Yeah. And it's so hard to empathize with a man like this, but it is once again such a challenge for me to, understand a man who's come home from war, again, another experience that I've never been through, come home from war, suffering from PTSD, to simultaneously hold the fact that you can empathize with what he's been through, while also not accepting or not allowing the way that he handles that, or the way that he processes that, or the way that he discards his trauma, doesn't transform it and transmits it to all of the people around him. Like, I struggle so much with that. Like, it truly, it infuriates me. And there were so many points in this book where I said, like, I was just shaking with frustration and infuriation over what these characters were doing, but forced me to grow as a person, forced me to grow. And then Cora, the mum, like, who simultaneously loves her daughter so much, but just cannot, loves a man as well that is so toxic and negative in her life, but she just cannot leave him, and that infuriated me as well. And this was the part, like, her character was the one that I think I really, really got stuck on, because I just couldn't overcome my anger at her for not leaving. Like, I just couldn't. There was no part of me that said, okay, I can empathize with this. Like, it was just pure frustration with her. And I still struggle, even though, you know, at the end, like, her passing was really touching and really emotional. There was still just so much of me that didn't want to, like, I didn't want to like her character, because I saw what her choices were doing to Lenny, and I just felt so much anger towards her. Okay, spoiler warning before we move into this next part. Obviously, if you've listened to this point, I'm sure that you've either read the book or know a lot about it, but we are going to be talking about the ending of the book now. So if you haven't read the book, please press pause. So obviously, their whole new life starts in Alaska. Ernst's violence begins escalating, and his insanity begins escalating, and he builds a wall around their home and begins to lock the girls in. And it was truly, like, harrowing for me. Like, I was like, oh my God, like, what is going to happen? Like, I'm so scared. Like, I've wanted to jump on a plane and fly there and just take these girls out of this situation. And then we get to Lenny arriving home pregnant and informing her father that she is pregnant, and he absolutely snaps, goes off the handle, and is probably going to kill her when Cora, the mother, shoots him. And, like, for me, I felt so much relief. Like, the stress and anxiety that had built in me to that point just dissipated. And I was just like, thank God. Like, thank God this man is gone. Thank God this character is no longer a part of this book. Like, he is done and he's out of the picture. Like, I was just so, so happy. And then we have Lenny and Cora decide to hide his body, get rid of him, and that obviously leads to them having to basically go on the run and, you know, disappear into new lives, where they head back to Cora's parents' place, begin their lives again, while Lenny has to leave Matthew, leave her love, leave her life, everything that she's built to this point. And it was a bittersweet moment for me to know that they were finally safe, and the relief of Cora finally making the decision to put her daughter and her daughter's safety and her own safety above, you know, her partner. Like, it was just such relief. But then to also be losing, you know, Matthew and losing their home and losing Alaska, it was a really bittersweet moment for me. But I think my relief and my joy that they were out of that situation overcame that. And then we get to the, you know, Cora's cancer and her passing away, and that, like, that deeply touched me as someone who I think I really related to the love between mother and child, and as someone who it truly made me think about, like, losing my mum, and it really impacted me, because I never ever want that day to come. And I had to sort of not face that day, but, like, I had to think about that going through this and experience those sorts of emotions, and that was really, really impactful to me. But then the most emotional part for me was then when Lenny finally returns to Alaska, and she takes her son to meet his father. As someone who I think, at this point in my life, my deepest desire, or one of my deepest desires, is to be a father, to see Matthew and see his reaction, and then see him meet his son that he did not even know that he had, was just destroyed me. And to hear Matthew's fear around his disability that he now has, and like his his fear of being incapable of raising a son. Like, it was, yeah. It makes me choke up now thinking about it, because I think any man, I think about myself, and raising a son is something that I really desire, and to be faced with the possibility of, not being able to do that, or not being able to do that to the way that I would deem acceptable is just really, really tough. So that part of the book for me, as a male reader, like that part just hit me like a sledgehammer. And I suppose that's, I want to hear from you guys, because I think, as I've spoken about this, it was so difficult for me, this book, in so many ways, because as a male, there were so many parts of this book that I'd never experienced before in my own life, and I've never been challenged in that way. So to be able to empathize with it and try and understand it was really challenging, and did truly force me to grow as a person and to expand my perspective. So I'd really love to hear from you guys, my listeners, my beautiful listeners, what your experience of that book was, because I'd love to know the difference between the male and the female experience of reading that book, because I think it would just be so different. And the scenes, my experience and my takeaway from certain scenes would just be so different would be so different from a female reader. And I'm wondering whether other male readers feel the same way that I do. The impact that the Matthew scene had, like, I wonder whether that affected men the same way that it affected me, and what was the female perspective on those situations. Like, it truly intrigues me. It intrigues me so much to know what your experience was and what impact it had on you, and what your takeaway from it was, from your own perspective and your own life experience. Because, that's a beautiful thing about books. There are characters in books that we can empathize with, but not like, or not admire, and not idolize, or want to be. There's so many books where I want to be, like, I aspire to be like a character in a book, but then there's so many characters that you can, walk with and hate to love in a way, and not aspire to be like them, but still have takeaways and empathy for their story. So I really want to hear what your take on it was, and what impact it had on you. Okay, so that was my takeaway from The Great Alone. There was a lot there. It was a lot to process for me. It was very challenging, very frustrating, and an absolutely gripping and phenomenal read. If you haven't read it yet, definitely go and read that book. So just to rehash quickly, the takeaways for me were Alaska as a beautiful place, and Alaska as a challenge physically, the interpersonal relationships, the home dynamics, the themes of DV and overcoming hardship both internally and externally, and then just the love and the loss, and all of those themes, and all the way that love showed up throughout that book, and all the way that loss showed up throughout that book. It was, incredible. Absolutely incredible. The next book for the Good Books Book Club is The Bronze Horseman by Paullina Simons. Now, I have been inundated for months by people telling me that I have to read this book. I have no idea what this book is about. I have just, as I said, I've just been inundated. So I am super, super excited to read this book, because the way that everyone talks about it, I know that it is going to blow me away. Thank you to everyone who sent voice memos to our email, which is goodbooks@9.com.au. And I'm so excited to get into this next book for our book club. For any more details on this, you can check out the podcast notes below. I can't thank you enough for joining me on this episode of In the Good Books. I am so overjoyed to be able to talk magic and words with more and more people. I'd be genuinely grateful if you'd subscribe to In the Good Books by hitting the follow button in your podcast app. I look forward to the next chapter.